Thank you for staying the course, coming to these sessions. Really appreciate it. Wow. You guys do not like the front or the middle at all, do you? That's pretty amazing. It's funny that when I teach class, the people that I see the most are the people that sit in the back. It's pretty funny. But I know for me, when I show up, I always want to sit in the back because I don't want to be noticed. It's weird how that works, but I always notice the people in the back. You know who I ignore? The quiet people that sit in the front. Look right over them every time. So maybe that should be your new strategy if you don't want to be seen. And he's going to come up to the front and be quiet. All right, well, my name is Tim Beckham. I am a project manager with ANSTSE. If you don't know what ANSTSE is, just take the U off Uditsia and put an A and just put American and then the rest of it, and that's what it is. American Driver Traffic Safety Education Association. I've been working there for 2.5 years. Before that, I was a driving instructor in Oregon. I was vice president of a driving school there, and I'm a trainer with Western Oregon University as well. And I'm going to talk about behind the wheel evaluation and the different types of evaluation that we have. So what we're going to do by the end of this, we're going to describe the various types of in-vehicle evaluation, describe acceptable criteria for rating a driver's performance. We're going to describe how evaluation takes place, what can be evaluated in the vehicle, and we're going to demonstrate how to provide feedback on the driver's performance. So that's what we're going to cover here. So here's our types of in-vehicle evaluation. So we have our initial evaluation. Before they get in the car, we're going to evaluate them, especially if you've never seen them before. Probably a good idea to evaluate them. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Then we have our ongoing evaluation. Evaluation is not at the end. It's going to occur throughout. We have our guided self-evaluation by the student. Hopefully you're having your student evaluate themselves when they are done driving. And then we'll have our summative evaluation at the end, and we're going to go over all of these. So let's talk about these characteristics of these evaluations. So the first one is initial evaluation. So you're going to determine what the student has learned up to that point. Could it be classroom that you're going to evaluate what they've learned? If you think so, give me a thumbs up. That's all I'm asking. Don't even need verbal confirmation, just a thumbs up. Okay? Make this easy on all of you, just thumbs up. Okay, so it could be classroom. Could it be driving experience that they have? If it is, just give me a thumbs up. Okay. What if they've never driven? What could you do?
Lots of drama.
What?
Lots of drama.
Oh, you just take drugs?
Yeah.
You as the instructor, never driven before? I have people ask me, do you want to have a student who's never driven before or has 100 hours of driving? And I always say, well, that's a tough one, because 100 hours of driving, you at least know that your first drive will be okay. But they also have some really bad habits. Where someone with 0 hours, you get to start from the scratch. But it gets a little dicey at times, so I don't know. It's a tough one. But do they have experience being a pedestrian? They have experience riding a bike on the road? Can we kind of pull from that experience as well? They have experience being a passenger. Can kind of get into that. How do their parents drive? All of that. Okay. So we're going to get into what they've learned up to that point. It's not just going to be just from classroom. If they've had a drive before, you're going to look at previous behind-the-wheel evaluations. How many here have different classroom instructor and a behind-the-wheel instructor? Okay. How many have multiple behind-the-wheel instructors? You might see different students. Yeah, it's kind of important to look at those previous behind-the-wheel evaluations. And if you are in that situation, when you're doing your summative evaluation and you're documenting that, it's important that you are very thorough and honest about that student's drive. I had a situation one time I got into the car with a student, second drive, looked at the notes, they were fine. This person was the worst driver I've ever experienced in all my life. We almost hit 11 cars in the parking lot. I'm not joking. And I had her pulled over. We never even left the parking lot. And I looked at the notes again, thinking maybe I picked a different student's notes. And I was like, nope, that's this person, and there's nothing in there about not ready to go on the road. That's set me up to fail. Of course, I could tell by how she was trying to leave the parking lot, where I was like, this is not going to go good. But it's important that we're honest about those behind-the-wheel evaluations. Ask the students what they're having difficulties with. They'll tell you. They're honest. Unless you ask them if they've been paying attention in class, then they might not be. But when you ask them about this, they will be honest. They'll tell you what they're struggling with. Ask them questions about the objectives. See where they're at. If you're doing lane changes, ask them, what's the procedure we use for lane changes? I heard earlier with Rich, just the previous one, that you use SMOG. Is that correct? That's correct, right? So I'm from Oregon. We use MSMOG. So we just basically make sure that we check both mirrors. So we have 2 mirror checks there, where I'm sure with your SMOG, your M, it's going to be both mirrors, so that's fine. But ask those type of questions. Gauge their knowledge on the objectives that you're going to be doing. I always talk about ongoing evaluation, and this one's extremely important. Not that the others aren't important, because they are, but this one's also important, because this needs to happen throughout the drive. I've traveled the country and I've trained instructors. I've observed classroom. I've observed behind the wheel. And I can't tell you how many instructors I have seen in a behind the wheel lesson that sit there, give directions, they're ready to grab the wheel, they're ready to hit the brake, and when they get back, that's when they give the evaluation. What did they do good? What did they do bad? Problem is, most students aren't going to remember all that stuff if you don't actually say something. You have to say something to that student. Let them know that they missed something. I am convinced that my students in behind the wheel check their blind spots just to get me to shut up about telling them to check their blind spots. And you know what? It's effective. They don't want to hear it anymore. So what are they going to do? They're going to check their blind spots. You have to give that ongoing evaluation. It's so important. That way the student knows what they need to work on. Because we've never had a student who thinks they're better than they are, right? Get those cocky teenagers, think they know it all. I've been driving for 50 hours with my parents. I got this down. And then you just start calling them on everything they're missing. And they're like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. It's important. Make sure you're doing it. I'll be honest, I didn't even look at the slide for this. I just kind of went off. So let me see here. Yeah, I think I covered everything. That's cool. Look at that. It's amazing. It's like I've done this before. I don't know. So mistakes must be corrected. Most of the time it's going to be words. We're going to be able to talk them through it. Sometimes we need to use visual aids. Not while they're driving, though. Please pull over. Visual aids. Who has like a little whiteboard in their car where they can draw stuff? Anybody? And a piece of paper? Do you have a clipboard with that paper? Or okay, that's good. You don't make them turn around right on their back? No? Yeah. So visual aids can help. Have you ever gotten into a situation where the student just isn't getting it at all, that you have to demonstrate it? Sometimes that has to happen, where they have to see it. So we have to correct it. Those are the ways that we can correct it. And this is really important. Provide praise. When they do something well, give them praise. Their turn might be the worst turn you've ever experienced in your life. Find something positive about that turn. Going to that turn, your speed was really good. We have to work on everything else, though. Okay? Something like that. Hey, you selected the perfect target coming out of the turn, so good job. Now let's just work on actually getting on target, right? But you have to do that. You have to give that positive reinforcement. It can't be negative all the time. We were trying to build up their confidence. Can't do that if it's always negative. That's an important piece when it comes to evaluation. And we need to write the evaluation, and I've said this earlier about reading behind the wheel notes, but it has to be on the individual's drive record. And I hope the parents can see it too. If the parents can't see it, please give them access to see the notes. It's important. I know most parents probably don't care. There's some that do. They do want to see those notes. So the more accurate it is, the better it's going to be for the student, for the parents, for you as an instructor, if you ever get asked a question about what you did on a drive, and also if there's another instructor that's going to come and do that drive for the student on their next in-vehicle lesson. All right, self-evaluation. This is important. Let the student evaluate themselves. Ask them what they did well and what they need to work on. Yes?
That's something I do all the time.
All the time, like nonstop?
And they point out what they actually did wrong. And sometimes I don't even notice. I realize it afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty cool.
So if no one could hear him, because he's all the way in the front left here for me, but for everybody over here, what he said was he does that with every single drive, and sometimes the students do such a good job, they point out things that he didn't even notice. They will be honest. But I always love it. And when I do instructor training, it's the same. Must just be human psychology here. Whenever you ask, how did it go? The first thing that almost everybody does is give everything they did wrong. So if they just jump into what they did wrong, what they need to work on, what should our question be right after they're done talking about that? You know, what did you do right? What did you do well? Now, sometimes you get those students who go, oh, I think the drive went good. And in my mind, I go, I have a different opinion because you did terrible. But I don't say they did terrible. But if they say that they've done well and they say what they did well, what's your next question? What do you need to work on? That's going to be your next question. Get them to say something positive and negative about their drive. We have to do that. Make them think about how they drove. That will help in retention and will help them when they get in those situations next time that they drive because they've had that time to think about it. Share with the students and parents the skills they need to practice with their parents before the next lesson. Because in Utah, they can go home and practice, correct? Yeah, there's some states, no, you can't do that. That just blows my mind. I don't understand being in driver ed but not being able to practice driving. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's good. Give them what you're going to work on next, so that way the parents, hopefully, can work on those next objectives you're working on. That way they have some experience when you get into the vehicle the next time. You can have the students record their evaluation for further assessment by the instructor and student. Again, maybe you don't have that on your drive record. Maybe it's something that you want to look at. But we have to remember this. As instructors, this is not the moment for us to give our feedback. So if a student says something that you agree with, and you agree with wholeheartedly, and you have so much to say because they do not check intersections, and you want to talk about the importance of checking intersections, and they mention on their self-evaluation that they need to work on checking intersections, that is not the moment for you to jump in and impose what you want to say. Let them finish. You'll have your time. Because if we interrupt and shut down a student when they're giving feedback from our questions, it's going to be a lot harder to pull stuff out of them next time. Give them their time. Let them talk. You'll have your time to shine right when we come into the summative evaluation. So I don't really need to go into the summative evaluation. It's going to be talking about everything that happened during the drive. But if we didn't do our ongoing evaluation, you don't want to get in the spot where you have to name all their mistakes and name everywhere they did those mistakes. Because if you call them out every single time that they miss a blind spot check, and you call them out 11 times, when you get to the summative evaluation, all you have to say is, hey, you need to work on your blind spot checks. You do a great job when you're changing lanes. But when you move into turn lanes and you cross bike lanes, you really struggle with that. That's where you need to work the most. Done. Because they remember, they've heard you say, check your blind spots multiple times. So that ongoing evaluation helps us when we get to the summative evaluation. All right, moving on. So measurements obtained when evaluating drivers. So we're doing this ongoing evaluation. We're going to give our summative evaluation. This is what we're looking for. The skills at maneuvering a car. I like to call it the car language. And we have body language. We also have car language. What the car's doing. It should be slowing down right now. There is a stop sign, but they're not. That car's speed is still going. That's telling us something. How are they at maneuvering this vehicle? How do they steer when they change lanes? Their speed choices. I think we all know for the most part in driver education, the speed choices is too slow. We don't have that many people that are going to speed all over the place in driver education. You might have had a student once or twice that they're struggling. They keep going 5 to 10 over, but that's a rarity. We understand that. But you can't have a student going 20 in a 45 mile per hour zone when it's a bright, sunny, dry day. That's actually dangerous. The ability to understand the information presented by the roadway. Could you get more vague than that? That encompasses a lot. So signs, lines, traffic lights, other vehicles, giving information. There's a lot of information that's out there when we're driving. How are they in understanding that? How are they processing that? Do they get confused easy? The rules of the road. There's not many rules of the road, is there? Anybody ever actually seen a vehicle code book? How thick it is? In Oregon, it's like this. It's insane. And there's some really obscure, weird rules of the road. Like in Oregon, you cannot be going downhill and put your car in neutral. And I always wonder, how do they know? Is there a cop going, no, that car's in neutral? Like, how's that even a law? Like, it makes no sense. And I'm sure Utah has some weird laws as well that are, why is that even in there? But they need to understand the basic rules of the road. They might not need to get that detailed into rules of the road, but they need to know them. Speeds. Where do you stop? In Utah, where do you stop when you come to a stop sign? Do you stop at the sign? Ooh, I got some mumbling on that one. Do you guys have stop lines here? Yeah? So you stop behind the stop line, is that true? What if there's no stop line and there's just a crosswalk? Do you stop behind the crosswalk? What if there's neither? Then where do you stop? What? In line with the stop sign, is that true? Maybe. I'm not from Utah, I don't know. But you'll have to teach your students that. So what's your vehicle code say about that? I don't know. But that's an important one because is that going to happen a lot? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. I just know, I've seen a picture in Vermont. There's a stop sign for the road you're traveling on the fence on the other side of the street that you don't want to cross. So you can't stop at the stop sign there because then you'd already be in the intersection. But let's take a look at that. The driver's ability to see, identify, and interact with other road users. When we think of road users, we tend to just think of cars. But are there other road users than just cars? I mean, we have some right out there. As vendors, give me some other roadway users that we have. Railway, okay, good. Trains, good. What else? I heard bikes over here. Okay, bicycles, yeah, what else? Pedestrians, yeah. Motorcycles, semi-trucks. Micro mobility. You ever seen those one-wheeled skateboard things? Those little scooters? Have you ever ridden an electric scooter? Man, those are fun. I'm telling you, they're great. I can see why they're very dangerous for us drivers, but they're fun to be on. And there's lots of different roadway users out there. So how do they interact? Do they see them? Can they identify the different types of roadway users? Their searching skills. Do they search every intersection? Or is it just the major intersections? Do they check the rear zone? Or rear space, or whatever it is that you call it, whatever's behind the vehicle? Do they check that? Do they do smog? When they change lanes, when they go into turn lanes, you're evaluating all of this stuff. And the management of space and time. Can they maintain a good following distance? Now in Utah, what's a good following distance? What do you teach? Huh? 3 seconds? Does anybody have something different besides 3 seconds? 3 to 6. Wow. What?
For every 10 miles an hour, they're going 1 second. So if they're going 44 seconds,
So at 10 miles an hour, they're going to be 1 second behind them?
you're going 10.
Hmm.
You're going 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's 1 second. That seems pretty close, but
10 miles an hour that you're going.
I get it. So 1 second, 10 miles an hour. So if you're going 10 miles an hour, you're 1 second behind them. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah, see there, I got you. But I like that. 50 miles an hour, 5 seconds. I think that's really good. Yes, I agree with you. I like that. I like that. So maybe like 3 seconds. Once you get above 30, add a second for 10 miles an hour. I think that's really good. So what can evaluations determine? Where is the student on learning progression? We all know we've had hundreds and thousands of students, not hundreds, maybe thousands of students. Not every student learns at the same rate. And we know there's students out there that have driven for 20 hours and they're pretty good. And you have students who do 20 hours and they still can't figure out how to do a smooth start. So where are they on that learning progression? So what's the next step in the learning process? Do they just move on to the next drive because they completed the hour? So if they can't do everything in drive 2, do they move on to drive 3? I hope not. I hope they stay at drive 2 because they're not ready. But for those students that have done a good job on 2, next step, drive 3, what are you going to be covering on that? Okay. So if they can't achieve the next outcomes, why not? That's what we have to do, and we're going to have to help them. We want to catch them up. We're going to identify the cause. I like to call them the problems lying in wait. What is it that you're doing back here that does not let you accomplish what you need to here when we're driving? We need to find those. Are they successful in responding to hazardous traffic situations? And obviously, their strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to tell you my weakness right now. I'll tell you. My weakness is I just drive too good. That's what it is. No, I'm joking. That's terrible. But I just love when you do interviews. It's like, I just care too much. And you're like, okay. My weakness is checking the rear zone. That's tough for me. Even after all these years, I'm not perfect at it. I get thinking about other things, trying to zone out a little bit if it's just a monotonous drive. We all do things like that at times, no matter how much we teach not to. It's hard. And all of you have a weakness out there. We all do. It's okay. But we need to find those strengths and weaknesses for the students and let them know. And obviously give positive feedback on their strengths and help them with their weaknesses. Identifying a driver's performance reliably. That's key. It has to be reliable. It has to be the same. We cannot have a different evaluation process for different students. And it's tough because some of these students, you're like, you know what, if you're 30 years older, we'd be friends. But you're not, so we're not friends. And some of them, you just really want to wait till they're 18 because then it's just a misdemeanor to punch them, right? I mean, it's true. Okay, don't punch them ever. Don't do that. But what I'm saying is we click with some students and other students we don't. And the tendency when you do behind the wheel with those students that you click with, you're going to evaluate differently than the ones that you don't. And we can't do that. So it needs to be reliable. It needs to be the same. So there's the objectives. It always goes back to the objectives. My trainer, her favorite saying was, teach to the objectives. I can't tell you how many times I heard her say that. And now I work with her and she's still saying it. Doing it for 20 years. She says it 5 times a class. Teach to your objectives. So our evaluation needs to be about your objectives. So we need to be completely familiar with the objectives. Rich talked about that last time. We have to know what we're going to be teaching and what the students need to be doing. We need to identify how they control the car and set criteria for acceptable performance as established in the lesson plan objectives. What is an acceptable performance for the lane change? You should have a grading system. 5 could be done perfectly, no coaching, no cueing, didn't need help at all. 4, they did really good, need to help them a little bit. 3, they needed some coaching. 2, they needed a lot of coaching. 1, they could not perform it at all. Now, is everybody else going to have different grading system? Yes. That's the one that I had when I was working at driving school. But there should be that criteria, something like that. So when you go to those objectives to score them, it's more reliable. So what are we going to do when we evaluate the driver? Check the time here. Oh man, I still got 20 minutes. Whew. All right, we're going to observe the driver's behavior closely and carefully. Behind the wheel is very tiring because we have to be on for every second that we're in the car with these students. I have some instructors, they tell me, oh, I trust my students. And I just look at them like, you're going to die one day. That's what's going to happen. Because you should never trust your teen students. They might be great, but they struggle with consistency. They will do everything right, and then at one moment they make the 100% wrong decision because they lack experience. And you never know when that one moment's going to come. So in Oregon, if you pass driver education and you pass that last drive, you bypass your drive test at the DMV. And I've had students who are fantastic drivers, and they get to that assessment drive and they lose it. They're so nervous, they make all these mistakes, and they fail. But it can't be, oh, you know what? I know how you've driven previously, so we're going to let you pass. I've had students who struggle on all the drives, but then, man, for that 30 minutes, they put it all together. Don't trust the students, because you never know. Closely, carefully, you're going to be observing them and their driving behaviors. You're going to observe the change in traffic situations and conditions. If you're not doing that, you're lucky that you haven't gotten in a crash. You have to observe. Not only to keep the car safe, but you have to know what's going on in the traffic situations and conditions to be able to evaluate how that student is doing with those traffic situations and conditions. And you're going to rate the driver after their performance. Please don't rate them while they're driving. I can't tell you how many instructors I've seen that pull out the clipboard right when they're driving and they start writing stuff down. And they're just like, and what's the problem with this? What are they looking at? The paper. Where should you be looking? I don't know, where the car's going maybe? It's probably a good idea. Right? That's important. Wait until the end. And I have instructors that go, well, I'm not going to remember everything that happened if I don't write it down. I mean, I don't know if you have to remember everything that happened. You have to remember what they need to work on and what they did well. You don't have to remember every single minute of that drive. You will know what they did well and what they need to work on. And then record the rating in writing. Always have some type of evaluation that's written. Could be on a computer, saved in the cloud somewhere. Make sure that's happening. Process for driver evaluation. So create an evaluation route which will present environments and situations to be evaluated. I'm a big believer in drive routes. Prince talked about it, Rich talked about it, and I'm going to talk about it. It's super important to have drive routes that meet the objectives of the drive. If you're driving around, you might miss just a couple objectives because you aren't purposely planning for objectives when you are just driving around. Have a specific route that meet the objectives. This helps with our evaluation because then we know that we are getting every single objective in, and not just once, multiple times. We have to create habit formation for these students. So if your objective is changing lanes, you shouldn't change lanes left once and change lanes right once. You should have 4 or 5 lane changes to the left and to the right, and more if you can. On my routes that I do for lane changes, I go down this long straight road with multiple lanes that isn't very busy. Those like industrial parks that have those multiple lanes that have all these semi-trucks during the day, but then late afternoon, no one's there. Man, what a great place to work on lane changes. Just bounce them back and forth. And they just get to work on them. We have to direct the driver over the route. Our directions that we give will help with evaluation. Because if we give a direction late, how does that affect a student? You ever been given a direction late? We all have. I guarantee you those turns or lane changes aren't the best that we do. We're setting up our students for failure. We are going to observe the road environment and all of the road users and anticipate potential issues well in advance. So another thing I see instructors lacking is anticipating what's going to happen in front of them. They react to everything that's in front of them. We need to anticipate to be ready. See what's happening. It helps with our evaluation because if we know what's coming, we're prepared and ready to do what we need to do, which then helps us evaluate if that student's going to do it. And there's that vehicle behavior, the car language. Observe that vehicle behavior. We need to assess what information the driver is acquiring, and when they are getting it and compare this information they need to acquire to drive safely. When are they picking it up? It's my favorite moment when you have a student who's struggling, then all of a sudden it just clicks. They get it, and just almost like instantaneously they start driving better. It's such a great feeling when that happens. But we have to be assessing that. When is that happening? Are they struggling with something? How successful are they in their decision-making process? Or making decision-making? My last one was decision-making, cognitive skills, decision-making process. So that's why I keep saying that. Let me do this again. Assess how successful the driver is in their making decisions and the consistency of this process. There we go. Yeah, they might make a decision correctly once, but can they do it again? Can they do it multiple times? We have to be assessing that. And how effective are they in implementing it? They might have the right idea to change lanes or slow down, but not all lane changes and not all braking is the same. And we know that. Number one goal for a behind the wheel lesson is that second bullet from the bottom. safe operation of the vehicle at all times. That's the number one goal. So we have to be doing that. Various factors that influence a driver's performance. So we have existing risks. Can we eliminate risk on the road? If we can, give me a thumbs up. If you can't, give me a thumbs down. If you're not sure, just go like this. Give me a mid. The answer is no. We can never eliminate risk. There's going to be places that have less risk. Different times of day, they'll have less risk, but there's always risk when we get out there on the road. So what existing risks are there? That's going to influence the driver's performance. Then it's the potential risks. Based on what's going on, what could happen in front of us that's going to create a risk, what's going to happen to the side of us. Environmental conditions. I've heard it snows here. Is that true? You have like the Winter Olympics, so I guess it has to snow, right? I heard you're getting those back again. Is that true? That's true. Congratulations. All right. I don't know why I said that, but that's okay. Environmental conditions. It's important. What's happening? Does it start raining? How hard is it raining? How is it affecting the roads you're on? Are there ruts in the road that's going to create more of an issue when there's water on the road? And traffic volume. How's the traffic here in Salt Lake? Is it good? I heard it sucks. Oh, you should go to Portland, then you can tell me. Traffic volume matters. It's a lot easier when there's nobody on the road. It's a lot easier when there's 4 cars. But when it's rush hour, a little more risky. That's going to influence driver's performance. The type of roadway and the speed of traffic, all going to matter when it comes to driver's performance. Factors that influence objectivity of evaluations. And we talked about the directions. Giving directions as planned is going to matter. Give them the opportunity to be successful. Don't do it late. Don't do it too early either. Like, hey, turn next intersection, turn left. If it's a mile away, it's too early. I've seen instructors do that. And they have the same thought process as, well, hey, turn signal you need to do early too. Yeah, well, there's also such thing as too early of a turn signal. Right? It can be poor communication. We don't want to give a poor direction. Rating the driver's performance on what was observed. Not what you think they did, not what they've done on previous drives. What was observed at that moment. Avoid any pet peeves that you may have. If somebody does a pet peeve, we tend to get a little more irritated. We tend to kind of go at that person a little bit more. Avoid the pet peeves, and it could be anything. It could be something they do while they're driving. Maybe your pet peeve is, I don't know, following too close, and they struggle with that, so you tend to go a little bit harder at them, a little bit more angry at them. It could be that your pet peeve is just people that smell and they smell. You know, it could be anything. Don't let that get into your evaluation. And avoid any critical comments. Remember, they're learning. I don't know anybody that just got into a car and was like, bam, I know how to do this. Now, there's some people that have picked it up quick. My son was one of those, picked it up quick. My daughter was not. So different experiences on that one. But don't be overly critical. Encourage them. So driver actions to evaluate. So searching. Is the student driver searching ahead, to the sides, behind, making frequent eye movement? Are they searching intersections? Are they checking behind them? Are they checking their blind spots? Their speed control. And not just are they speeding or are they going too slow, how are they accelerating? How are they braking? Are they braking too late? Which tends to be a new driver problem, always braking too late. Yeah. So speed control just isn't about the speed of the vehicle when it comes to the speed limit, accelerating and slowing down as well. Direction control. Can they move into a correct lane position? Sometimes I have students that want to move in lane position and they just change lanes. And you're like, we were supposed to be over there. Okay. Timing, space, and control. Are they using proper gap selection when they cross traffic or enter traffic? Are they maintaining proper following distance? Are they making sure that they are driving in an area where they have a place to go to the sides? So they have an open side zone. All things we need to be evaluating. So how drivers take actions. Now look at this list. Okay? For the people in the back, I'm going to read the list to you. So how drivers can take actions. It's either gradual and smooth, anticipated, or an early response, which those two we want. Those are always the best. Delay or make a late response, no response at all. Sudden, abrupt, or spontaneous, or erratic responses either incidentally or continually. Now, of that list, which one is the most scary for driver instructors? A lot of people say it's the no response at all. And even on these slides, it's capitalized. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the scariest at all. Mine is the sudden, abrupt, or spontaneous. You ever have a student who's driving down the road and all of a sudden they just change lanes? It's terrifying. You start to search, but you're also trying to grab the wheel and you don't know what to do in the moment. Just praying that there's not a car next to you. Yeah, we've had that. It's not fun. I don't know why they do it. And then you ask them, why'd you change lanes? And their answer is always, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? How did you just change lanes for no reason and not know why? Blows my mind. But that's how they will take action. So we need to observe that. Which ones are they doing? Okay. Cause of driver action. So the time and distance available to judge. Time and distance available to take the action once the decision to act has occurred. And the number of tasks that must be performed. We have to evaluate all of those. We have a big job when we are teaching behind the wheel. There's a lot that goes into this. Prince said earlier that some people think it's really easy to be a driver ed instructor. My mom is one of those. She's like, I'd make a great driving instructor. And I'm like, really, Mom? No, you wouldn't. And she goes, yeah, I would. I know how to drive. I'm like, this doesn't make you a good instructor. Because when you're a passenger and you're going by a semi-truck, this is my mom's response. Right? I'm like, you wouldn't be a good driving ed instructor. You just couldn't handle it. Okay? Then you get some people that think you're putting your life on your line. One of my best friends is a police officer, and he's like, thank you. I'm like, for what? And he's like, well, my son, he took driver ed with you, and just thanks for putting your life on the line every day. I'm like, I'm not the one that has the possibility of getting shot at every day, so I should be thanking you for putting your life on the line. But it's amazing. But we have a big job. There's a lot to evaluate, a lot to teach, all while trying to make sure that the car is safe at all times. So quickly, as we wrap up, because I got 6 minutes, and it's getting to the end of the day, so I've got to make sure we stay on time. We want to, acceptable criteria, decreasing risk by searching, adjusting speed or direction. Not causing another driver to change speed and direction. I always love the people that go, I'm a great driver because I've never crashed. Well, maybe everybody else is a really good driver that's around you and you're terrible. Like, that's a possibility. Reporting what was observed about the driver's behaviors and complying with traffic laws. That's acceptable criteria. Wow. You guys probably wish you were over there, don't you? I know. Unacceptable criteria. You feel comfortable is not acceptable. Because you know what? There's some people that can face death and be totally calm. And there's some people who panic about everything. The potential of danger, they will panic. Like Portland, when it's the potential of snow, they freak out and do state of emergencies. That's true, we do. And then no snow comes at all. It's embarrassing, really. The driver does what you do. Well, you might be a terrible driver. Hopefully not because you're teaching people to drive, but I've been in the car with some driver ed instructors and wow. I just wonder how they got their license. not their teaching driver education license. It's crazy. Yeah. You become frightened. Again, we talked about that. That's not acceptable. You compare one driver to another. Don't do that, especially siblings. Why don't you drive more like your sister? Like, come on, don't do that. Don't compare the drivers. You might have two drivers, one's really good and the other one's not very good. That's not acceptable. You're like, well, your driver wasn't that great because you're not as good as your observing student back there. Like, that's not okay. Another one, would you feel comfortable with the student driving towards you in another vehicle? These are all evaluations that people do. Like, oh yeah, they're great, I'd feel comfortable. If they were driving next to me, I would be just fine. Not acceptable. Always goes back to the objectives, 100%. So providing feedback should be done in a systematic way related to the objectives of the lesson and the environment. Relate to judgment and or performance in searching, speed control, direction control, timing, and decision-making skills. And should be done immediately if mistakes are being made. Don't wait. I know we've talked about that, but it's really important. I can't tell you how many times I've seen instructors do that. Wait till the very end. Don't do that. Immediate. Sometimes they don't even know they made a mistake unless you tell them. Be clear and concise. Don't take 3 minutes to explain how they have to search intersections. That's too long. You're going to confuse them. Shouldn't take that long to say you need to search every intersection. When you're stopped, 90 degrees, left, front, right. When you're moving, 45 degrees, left, front, right. I don't know what you teach, but in Oregon, that's what we teach. That should be it. Done. Give suggestions relevant to the driver's abilities. You should outline those, but give them something to work on they can take home and give reasons why they should find it helpful to implement these suggestions. And always keep record. Okay, I know Rich talked about this quite a bit, so I'm just going to say, make sure you're keeping records. It's important. Rich talked earlier today about covering your assets because you need to be protected in case something does go wrong. And it has happened before. So make sure you're covered if the unthinkable does happen. So we described the various types of in-vehicle evaluation. We described acceptable criteria for rating a driver's performance. We described how evaluation takes place and what can be evaluated in the vehicle. And we talked about how to provide feedback on the driver's performance. So that is all I have for you. If there's any questions, we have a total 2 minutes. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to come up and talk to me after, that's fine. No problem. I really appreciate being out here. It's been great. I love coming to this place. I was here last year and it's fantastic. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy your next presentation with Bill, right? You're here? Yeah. All right.